Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this live emergency weather briefing, severe weather briefing. 4 days of severe weather potential ahead, starting tonight across far northeastern Oklahoma into a large swath of Missouri, southeastern Kansas. Those aren't going to fire until about 8 or 9 p.m. this evening. There is a very low-end tornado threat with those storms, relatively high-based, new arrival of the moisture. That's going to be associated with a lead wave that is ejecting. And then on Monday, the tornado threat focuses across the Arklatex up through a large swath of central Arkansas into the southern portion of the Ozarks. And then on Tuesday, a very significant tornado outbreak is possible. Looks like the potential for the most significant tornado potential across Tornado Alley in about 3 years since the very active 2019 season when we launched the rocket into the tornado from Dominator 3 across northeastern Kansas, 2019. This is the biggest setup that we have seen in the plains in some time. And here you can see I have a large area delineated for that tornado potential, but there's actually going to be a couple of different modes. You could target the surface low track across the northern end of that risk, eastern Nebraska, across a large swath of Iowa as well. That's a traditional target area with the warm front lifting up along with the surface low ejection. That'll be right on the nose of the ski jump configuration. Or you could play further down the dry line. A lot of the parameter space is maxed out to the east of the dry line across central and eastern Kansas, down across northwestern Oklahoma, kind of that traditional Southern Plains tornado outbreak zone that happened on April 14, 2012. Quite a massive tornado outbreak with tornadoes all the way down into northwestern Oklahoma. Some of the most chaseable tornadoes were down in northwest Oklahoma on that day, but it is also possible that supercell tornadoes could develop all the way down through the DFW area later on, and then that threat is going to shift off to the east in the evening and overnight hours. Could be prefrontal confluence lines that are going to light up with renegade supercells, bands of renegade supercells across the open warm sector as well on Tuesday. A lot of backdoor targets potentially on that day on Tuesday. And then the fourth one in a row, this is on Wednesday, the threat shifts toward Dixie Alley. This is going to be a northern Louisiana, central southern Mississippi, and there also could be a northern mode as well that could materialize across the Ohio River Valley, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, western Kentucky as well on Wednesday. I do think that there is a tornado outbreak potential on Wednesday as well with this one ejecting. But now I want to show you the 500 millibar pattern. I like to start off in the upper levels of the atmosphere at the level of non-divergence just to show you a general look at the pattern. There is the lead wave. That's going to lead to the severe weather this evening. That thing launches up to the Great Lakes, and then your next massive monster trough ejection ejects across the plains. This is called a ski jump configuration. When you get that jet max that rotates around the base of the trough with the nose all the way up into the central plains, there you can see the ski jump taking shape upstream with that large scale trough ejection. This is a very large open wave, as we call it, a consolidated polar front jet stream from west to east across North America. This is different than the El Nino years when you get a dominant split flow pattern. You get an energized subtropical jet interacting with the polar front jet stream, creates quite a buckled upper level jet. You get a lot of closed lows, a lot of heavy rainfall events across the southern U.S. and including the southern plains as well. This one is a year 2 La Nina warm blob across the north central Pacific, and that creates a classic situation with dry clashing with moist. Wildfires off to the west as well behind these dry lines. Once again, you're going to see a huge wildfire potential with this severe weather event that is going to maximize across the southern plains just behind the dry line. So I want to first focus on the severe weather threat today. This is the latest HRRR model. This is the lead wave that's going to lead to the severe weather this evening, and it looks like those supercells are going to develop across northeastern Oklahoma into southern Missouri, right on the southern periphery of that rapidly ejecting trough. This is at 2Z at about 9 p.m., just when I do expect severe weather to develop. This is the low-level jet shunted off to the southeast, and it's a strong low-level jet as well. Goes from northeastern Oklahoma into southwestern Missouri all the way up into the central portion of the state. If better moisture was in place, we'd be talking about tornado outbreak potential today as well. But you can see kind of a late arrival of the moisture. This is the HRRR that has dew points in the mid to upper 50s all the way up to that zone where we expect severe weather to develop. The main surface low is all the way up into southern Minnesota. That's a 993 low that lifts all the way up into Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then there's a front that sags all the way down, bends back toward the Ozarks, back into Oklahoma as well. That's a front that's going to be the initiating boundary that's going to provide the surface convergence necessary to get these storms in place. Here's the front by about 2Z. Let's go a little bit earlier to 1Z. This is 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And now we're going to go over to the composite reflectivity, and I'm going to show you when we do expect storms to initiate. This is at 2Z, 9 p.m., 10 p.m., bam, ignition. Storms develop. Southwestern Missouri into northeastern Oklahoma. Classic initiation there after sunset. There's your mode of supercell storms. Decent wind shear, late arrival of the moisture, a little bit high based. You can see some mid 50s dew points just ahead of the boundary. This pooling, these little blotches of blue there, that's because of the falling rain, evaporational cooling. Look at these dry dew points, negative dew points surging into western Kansas, southern Nebraska. Very dry air that is located to the west of the moisture axis that's lifting up through Oklahoma, setting the stage for severe weather from the Arklatex up through central Arkansas. These could even have the potential for some gorilla hail, potentially. There's a stout elevated mixed layer, some decent directional shear, supercell composite, the nose of those favorable parameter space. Let's look at a forecast sounding. And there is going to be a lot of capping, certainly, because of the dry, relatively dry dew points, late arrival of the moisture, rapid formation of a nocturnal inversion as well at the low levels. But despite the relatively modest thermodynamics and the development of that capping inversion, the hodograph does support a low-end tornado potential, and that's why there is a 2% tornado risk with this mode. Quite a bit of directional shear from the surface with a due southerly wind up to a westerly wind at 700 millibars. Classic low-level directional shear, slightly elevated supercell storms, dry, relatively cold air aloft. Seems to be a hail threat with these storms at the nose of the instability, northeastern Oklahoma into southwestern Missouri. That's where I'd expect the greatest hail potential with these. Decent surface-based Kate, 1,500 to 2,000 along that boundary. And the boundary is not advancing too terribly fast, just kind of sitting from northeastern Oklahoma to northwestern into southwestern Missouri through evening. Should be an effective initiator of storms 9, 10, 11 p.m. as those storms will form off the front. You can see little holes within the surface-based Cape. And there's the supercell storms by 4Z evolving through southwestern Missouri. These are going to be large hail producers. So you're going to see the classic video that's going to come out today with the sporadic large hailstones dropping from a relatively elevated updraft. That's tonight. That's day one of the severe weather moving into southwestern Missouri, far northeastern Oklahoma. The scant man's going to be all over these for sure. But the story is late arrival of moisture. This is a lead wave that lifts up toward the Great Lakes, ejecting quite fast as the front surges. It barely meets up with the moisture, and you do get the development of potentially some high-based, surface-based supercells, probably elevated over the rapid development of a nocturnal inversion. But there is quite a bit of directional shear from the surface wind up to a near westerly wind at about 700 millibars that could set the stage for some large hailstones, even up to gorilla size, northeastern Oklahoma into southwestern Missouri. And then the threat shifts to tornado potential on Monday. There's your lead wave that's going to eject off to the northeast. There's the next wave starting to appear. That's already Tuesday morning at 12Z. That's going to be the large scale trough. But on Monday, the upper level pattern shows the lead wave lifting all the way up rapidly to the northern Great Lakes. And then you kind of have this mean cyclonic flow, a little bit of ridging ahead of the massive trough that's diving down for Tuesday. That's across the Pacific Northwest by Monday evening. That's the initial look at the ski jump trough that's going to be ejecting across the Great Plains from the Mountain West across the Great Plains. There's the Vortex across the Pacific Northwest. There's the belt, a very strong westerlies. That's the nose of the ski jump configuration. Textbook ski jump configuration Monday evening with that trough starting to take shape. But it's this lead wave, a couple little jet streaks that are embedded behind the lead wave that's leading to the severe weather tonight that could be an initiator of storms across the Arklatex on Monday evening. Here is the jet streak that arrives from northeastern Texas. That's going to be Monday evening, just at about sunset, as that jet streak punches off to the east. It's a pretty strong mid-level flow. There's a disturbance back behind. This is the actual jet streak here that could initiate storms Monday evening, maybe even some gorilla hailers as well late evening back into northeastern Texas. There's a nice low-level jet that develops 35 to 40 knots, nosing into western Arkansas all the way up to the I-40 corridor by 0Z. Look at that strong low-level jet that develops further east across the Mid-South. You got to wonder if there's going to be tornado potential even further east across portions of the Mississippi River. Usually events like this that are kind of a muddy upper-level pattern with jet streaks embedded within can lead to some surprises. They can lead to tornadoes that are maybe outside of the target area, tornadoes further east, possibly even across the lower Mississippi River Valley as well. You can hear Gizmo down there going nuts. She's all fired up. But here is the large-scale warm sector that is setting up by Monday evening. It extends all the way east into western Tennessee, northern Mississippi as well, a large swath of Arkansas up into the Ozarks as well. You can see all those holes within the surface-based Cape field in the 0 to 3 kilometer EHI field as well. So that's a pretty large warm sector with relatively muddy upper level flow. A lot of surface-based instability. This is a 0 to 3 kilometer EHI field. Definitely the bright colors are dominating the state of Arkansas and to the east across northern Mississippi and western Tennessee, certainly. But up aloft at 500, you do kind of have a muddy environment. It's this jet streak, kind of a ribbon that extends south from the parent lead wave that leads to the severe weather tonight that's lifting up over the northern Great Lakes. A couple little embedded jet streaks within this ahead of the main wave. The main megatroph is going to be diving in on Tuesday, possibly a historic event across Tornado Alley, the biggest tornado event in 3 years to impact central and southern Tornado Alley. We're going to break that down as well. But first, I want to show you Arkansas on Monday evening. There's the jet streak. Decent low-level jet. 30 knots, nosing up into the I-40 corridor into central Arkansas. Stronger low-level jet off to the east. Out ahead of that jet streak just a bit. Monday is going to be a pretty complicated forecast, but I could also see it being a surprise day across Arkansas. Kind of the day before the day with severe weather potential. And wow, that's intense. That's the 12ZHRRR absolutely lighting up central Arkansas with supercell storms, gorilla hailers, likely with tornado potential as well. 30 knots at 850 out of the southwest. That is nasty right there, everybody. Wow. That develops at about 5 to 6 p.m. just southwest of Little Rock, right near the quartz capital of the world, down near Mount Ida to the southwest of Little Rock. Looks like a cluster of numerous supercell storms that develop across western Arkansas, moving up through the Little Rock area. This is at 6 p.m. Monday evening. 7 p.m. Monday evening. Oh my goodness. I-40 corridor, central Arkansas. Count them, 6-8 supercell storms, all dropping gorilla hail at 7 p.m. just prior to sunset, continuing after sunset across the southern part of the Ozarks, eastern Arkansas as well. Definitely could see tornadoes across this large area, spreading east toward the Mississippi River Valley. Memphis, this is about 9 p.m., 10 p.m. This is likely going to prompt at least an enhanced risk for Monday evening. That's a definitely widespread eruption of supercell storms associated with that jet streak. westerly winds. There's a lot of directional shear from the surface. You have due southerly 850s at a kilometer above the ground. Your surface winds due southerly as well, but then you go up to a due westerly wind at 500. Quite a bit of directional shear between the low levels and the mid levels of the atmosphere, likely setting the stage for guerrilla hail potential across Arkansas and the threat of tornadoes Monday evening. And that's why we rolled out this target. Our target area in pink there. Very large hail. Isolated tornado potential as well. Arklatex up into central Arkansas Monday. I definitely need to get my taxes done today. That's kind of my main mission, is to finish my taxes today and then point the vehicle west for full-blown storm chase mode Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Central Arkansas, it appears, is going to be the target on Monday, especially according to the latest 3-kilometer NAM. That's your Monday target area. Let's take a look at what the 0 to 1 kilometer shear does quickly across this target. Well, we'll start off with the 0 to 1 kilometer EHI. It's a composite index. I generally don't like using composite indices because they can mask the contributing factors of surface space instability and 0 to 1 kilometer shear. But in this case, it's not a bad idea to basically show where 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative felicity overlays with the greatest surface space instability. And by 6 p.m., near and just to the west of Little Rock, definitely very strongly positive 0 to 1 kilometer EHIs. Definitely that favor guerrilla hail potential and also significant tornado potential. PDS tornado soundings getting painted all across this zone. Let me break down. Wow. Gizmo's going nuts right now. She is amped. You can hear her barking downstairs. Probably see some cats. This photograph is definitely supportive of a strong to potentially violent tornado, despite the low-level jet only being about 35 knots, and that's because of all the directional shear. South-southeast surface wind, south-southwest 1 kilometer wind, and then your mid and upper level winds, west-southwesterly. That also favors very large hail, 76 over 65, mid to upper 60s dew points arrive, an abundance of surface space instability, steep lapse rates as well. You can see that directional shear here. Southeasterly surface winds, southwesterly wind just above the ground, and a west-southwesterly wind at 3 kilometers. That directional shear in the low levels of the atmosphere, definitely crucial for large hail generation. Also crucial for squeezing out an abundance of 0 to 1 kilometer shear storm relative helicity in the lowest levels of the atmosphere, because you're able to get this strongly curved photograph without just purely speed shear. You have kind of an equal contribution of the directional shear and speed shear, but still a decent low-level jet at about 30 to 40 knots a kilometer above the ground. Southwesterly low-level jet feeding into this zone where you do have the greatest low-level wind shear, greatest instability, pooling of the dew points at the nose of the low-level jet and along the southern edge of the terrain, southern edge of the Ozark Mountains, major pooling of those dew points into the southern gradient of the mountains, 23Z up into 0Z as well. Look at that pooling. Probably a little bit of evaporation as well from the falling rain falling on the ground, helping to bump those dew points up into the upper 60s a little bit. Rain has fallen in this portion of Arkansas. That's why you get those dew points up into the mid and upper 60s. So we do have the 12Z 3 kilometer NAM coming out. Interestingly, the 3 kilometer NAM hasn't done as good as some of the other models this year, I've been noticing. The HRRR actually has done a pretty good job. And look at the 3 kilometer NAM. Doesn't convect Arkansas nearly as much as the HRRR. Subtle forcing. Certainly with kind of that muddy upper level flow. You have a front, semi-permanent front sitting down there as well. So not all convective allowing models agree on that explosion of supercell storms across western into central Arkansas. Let's look at the low-level jet configuration, the 3 kilometer NAM. And much less of a back to low-level jet, more veered. That's at 5Z, however, so let's go a little bit earlier toward the evening. You do have that pop of a southwesterly low-level jet across Arkansas, but it is more westerly, not as prominent, kind of a dominance of the low-level jet axis over the lower Mississippi River Valley on Monday. Look at the comparison in the shape between the 6Z 3-kilometer NAM and the low-level jet of the HRRR. Notice how it's a lot more backed. But then you go to 0Z, or the 12Z run. This is the 6Z HRRR run. Then you go to the 12Z run, and it's stronger and backed. So it seems like the HRRR is retaining that backed low-level jet. Definitely has a more prominent jet streak along the southern edge. A little bit of some more pressure falls at the low levels, helping to back that low-level jet. But definitely a complicated pattern. HRRR shows an uptrend in the low-level jet. In the 6Z to the 12Z runs, an absolute explosion of supercells across Arkansas. We go back to 6Z and a lot less. So the trend in the HRRR from 6Z to 12Z is for an eruption of numerous supercells. The 6Z run, the HRRR, still fires those supercells just a little bit later at about 8 p.m. Still fires a number of supercells, though, across central and northern Arkansas, right along the southern edge of the Ozarks. Low-level jet nose, pooling up that moisture at the southern gradient of the Ozarks. So the 6 to 12Z HRRR is trending up in the severe weather event. A little bit earlier in the development of these supercell storms, developing at about 6 or 7 p.m. instead of 7 or 8 p.m. across just to the west of Little Rock. Interestingly, though, the 3-kilometer NAM has a more veered low-level jet, a lot less in the way of supercell storms firing. I want to show you this hodograph product for 0Z across Arkansas, overlaid on surface-based instability. So you can see the surface-based instability. Each grid point here on the HRRR, a hodograph is plotted to give you an assessment of the wind shear. Definitely greater wind shear up here along the nose of the instability axis, more curved hodographs at 0Z. But those low-level shear vectors are not huge at 0Z, where you do have the co-location of surface-based instability. That's why it probably looks like, initially at least, a threat of more guerrilla hailers. But then as you go to 1Z at about 8 p.m., look at that hodograph right near Little Rock. Notice how that purple line elongates. That's the low-level shear vector. Hodograph elongates substantially, and that's when you get a development of some pretty substantial 0 to 1 kilometer shear, especially right at the nose of the low-level jet near the Little Rock area. It's possible that's in the wake of some of those storms, but it also is related to the low-level jet increasing as you go through the evening toward the magic hour. Nose of the low-level jet, central, northern Arkansas, right along the southern gradient of the terrain of the Ozarks. That's where you get the most favorable environment for severe weather. Not surprising, though, you have immense low-level wind shear further east beneath the core of the low-level jet, where you have a 50-plus knot low-level jet. The low-level jet's a lot stronger across the lower Mississippi River Valley, but you still have this 40-knot to even 50-knot low-level jet nosing up into the southern gradient of the Ozarks. That's probably going to squeeze out enough low-level shear for a pretty robust tornado potential right along the southern gradient of the Ozarks. And the 3-kilometer NAM doesn't show as much low-level wind shear, but that's at Monday at 13Z. So we're looking on Monday morning. Don't even compare those two maps. So it does have a belt of 200 to 250 0 to 1 kilometer shear as well across central Arkansas, nosing up into the southern gradient of the Ozarks. That's the 6ZH 3-kilometer NAM. And that's despite a relatively veered and lower magnitude low-level jet as well that's associated with that. Just to show you guys that I have a ticker that's in operation. Who are you these days in 2022 if you don't have a ticker scrolling along the bottom of your live stream? So now I'm going to go to Tuesday and the evolution of this monster dry line. And that's not surprising. You expect to see these intense dry lines during a year 2 La Nina event, warm NPO as well. But here you can see this dry line evolving on Tuesday. This is the initial period today. This is Sunday evening. Then you can see that front sag down into Arkansas, becomes stationary. Maybe it becks the cluster of supercells on Monday evening. There's the dry line on Tuesday. Look at that massive dry line that wants to set up shop near the I-35 corridor on Tuesday afternoon. The parameter space, at least according to the NAM, the global models, we can look at the new. Let's see if the 12Z NAM is out. It's not quite out to Tuesday just yet, so we'll use yesterday evening's models. Generally, we don't like to use the mid runs, 6Z. So let's look at Tuesday now, and in particular, this dry line that's going to be punching to the east. This is the NAM, regular NAM from last night that we are breaking down right now. Potentially historic setup on Tuesday. One of the more substantial setups to impact Tornado Alley in about 3 years since 2019. Here you can see the large open wave. Still, it is closed on some levels with this Vortex here across the Mountain West up near Yellowstone. But then you have the ski jump configuration. This is the nose of the jet, classic ski jump. Imagine a ski jumper just launching off the end of that ramp. That is a classic ski jump configuration late morning on Tuesday. And arrival of that strong flow over the dry line just in time for peak heating. That's at 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time. You can see an arrival of that jet streak just in time for peak heating. It creates a monster low-level jet. Look at the low-level jet here. Eastern Nebraska all the way down, banked up against that dry line across Kansas, even in northern Oklahoma. I think you're going to get development of numerous supercells along the dry line that are going to move into this very strong wind shear. I also think you're going to get an arc of supercells up near the surface low, eastern Nebraska, up into western Iowa. Very favorable wind shear. Just simply looking at the parameter space, 0 to 3 kilometer EHIs here, the bright colors maximized where you have that 50 plus knot southwesterly low-level jet just to the east of the dry line. At least the 0Z NAM last night is a little bit less bullish on the surface low track, but definitely very bullish on the dry line target. Wichita, northwestern Oklahoma, northeast of Wichita, Topeka. All of those are just absolutely major parameter space. Warm front lifting up through Kansas City, probably similar to the outbreak May 8, 2003. You'll likely even get some renegades near the warm front east of the dry line, probably even in the Kansas City area. That May 8, 2003 event, there was a big wedge, a renegade way out east of the dry line relatively early near Kansas City as well. Then the dry line erupted. Then an EF4 tornado came through the Moore area. Moore definitely could get strong to potentially violent tornadoes from this configuration. Very strong dry line advecting to the east, almost to the I-35 corridor. There's your powerful dry line. Dew points up into the middle 60s, even upper 60s. Dew points dropping into the teens back behind the dry line. Very sharp dry line. Let's look really quick at the GFS, see where that sharp dry line advects. Strong agreement on the dry line configuration, at least down into the southern plains amongst the global models, the North American models as well. Interesting. It'll be interesting to see the convective allowing models where they convect. This dew points mix out according to the NAM a little bit across North Texas, but even DFW could be included in that strong tornado threat. Look at the reservoir of 70s dew points sitting down across the Gulf of Mexico, maintained largely by the anticyclone off the southeastern U.S. that maintains southerly flow over the Gulf of Mexico, maintaining that deep reservoir of moisture that's going to be available for all these storm systems through the month of April. You're going to have supercells up and down this dry line from the surface low all the way down through Kansas, central Kansas, eastern Kansas, 979 surface low into eastern Nebraska. I was talking a little bit amongst fellow weather enthusiasts, And I was drawing some comparisons to the Brady, Nebraska day back in 2000 when only the surface low had tornadoes, including a northerly or north-northwesterly moving tornado right up tight against the surface low. Big probabilities for significant severe weather all the way down the dry line on that day as well. Kansas all the way into Oklahoma. Tornado watches were issued. Towers were starting to go up along the dry line. And we left the storm up near Brady, Nebraska, and dropped south to the dry line down into Kansas that day in 2022 years ago, and ended up missing all those incredible tornadoes up tight up against the surface low. Jeff Petrowski was all over him, like 100 yards away from that tornado hugging the surface low. And then the cap came in and killed all the towers along the dry line to the south. Kansas all the way down into Oklahoma. And by the way, look at this monster anticyclone off the southeastern U.S., 1026 high. That's definitely in part contributing to the reservoir of big-time dew points that's building up across the Gulf of Mexico, making this event possible. Southeasterly surface winds all along the dry line, all the way down into Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. Likely you'd want to target the Kansas area just because that's where the parameter space is greatest. You could argue, though, hugging the surface low. I do wonder if the dew points are going to be mixed out a little bit. Right at that nose, the arc all the way up into the surface low. Right now, the GFS is showing that to happen, but as you get a little closer to the event, you'll probably see those dew points wrap all the way up around the surface low, but you can see that the NAM tries to mix out the nose of those dew points as well up near that powerful surface low ejection. Maybe just too much dry air just above the ground. The GFS is even stronger with the surface low than the NAM. Agreement, though, with the anticyclone off the southeastern U.S., 1023, 1025 high. This is a very strong surface low, whether it's 985 or 973. It's like you're going to have wind shear that's going to be supportive of tornadic supercells up and down that dry line. Central, southern plains, parameter space maxed out. Look at that. And you got to be kidding me. Even though that's at 3Z, shows that the parameters are intensifying with time. Near the magic hour, near the end of the magic hour here. PDS, tornado soundings all over the place. Massive soundings. Capping inversion starts to build in. But you're likely going to have so many mesocyclones operating that it's just going to be nasty. Warm front lifts all the way up through the Omaha area by 10 p.m. That's going to bring that tornado threat up into Iowa as well. And then you start to get the Dixie Alley mode, nocturnal mode, beginning to develop. Arkansas, Missouri. Warm front lifts all the way up to Des Moines by midnight, probably bringing with it tornado potential. Historic tornado outbreak, it appears, on Tuesday night into Wednesday. You're going to have round after round of supercell storms coming off of the dry line there. And then the threat shifts to classic Dixie Alley outbreak on Wednesday. That's Wednesday morning. Look out. Lower Mississippi River Valley on Wednesday. Major outbreak. The GFS is definitely underdoing instability on Wednesday. That's likely going to be a major outbreak as well across the Mid-South, down across the lower Mississippi River Valley into the afternoon hours, possibly even as far north, western Tennessee, western Kentucky as well. There you can see the front prefrontal confluence lines all over that large warm sector. European model and NAM models a lot more favorable for that Dixie Alley setup. And boy, does the atmosphere like to repeat itself. Once again, you have this weird trough ejection, not dissimilar from the last couple upon arrival in the central and southern U.S. You kind of have this elbow, an elongated trough axis. This one kind of tries to assume a bit of a negative tilt upon arrival across the lower Mississippi River Valley. This looks like a major tornado outbreak as well. Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, central lower Mississippi River Valley. Huge vortex ejecting across the central and lower Mississippi River Valley there. Very strong, powerful, large-scale, low-level jet. Looks more likely centered over western Tennessee, northeastern Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, with a little bit of a weakening of the low-level jet down into Mississippi, further south across the Mid-South, but still relatively potent. So this is an absolutely major outbreak. potentially beginning as early as tonight across northeastern Oklahoma into southwestern Missouri. And on Monday, the HRRR shows an eruption of multiple supercells, gorilla hail, isolated tornado potential, western southwestern Arkansas up into the southern gradient of the Ozark Mountains. And then Tuesday looks like a historic tornado outbreak. I-35 dry line, parameter space maximized central Oklahoma up through eastern Kansas, all the way up to the surface low with the warm front reaching Omaha and central Iowa and Des Moines on Tuesday evening. And then Wednesday, the severe weather threat focuses across the Mid-South, Dixie Alley, trough ejection. 4 days in a row of severe weather. Definitely the most significant outbreak that I've seen since at least 2009. I'm, of course, going to be activating storm chase mode once I get my taxes done today. I'm going to be hitting the road, live streaming, tickers, overlays, content aggregation, full court press happening up here, storm chasing wise. Definitely stay tuned. Sign up for notifications. Subscribe definitely for those live updates, because this is going to be the most significant tornado outbreak in 3 years coming to Tornado Alley and also Dixie Alley on Wednesday. So thank you everybody for tuning into my weather reports. I am going to be doing an in-depth forecast discussion and live Q&A for Facebook subscribers exclusively this evening once I arrive in my target area. It might also be as I'm driving out to my target area in Dominator 4. So thank you everybody for tuning in to this emergency weather briefing.